Morning. Welcome.
Morning. Thank you.
On this wet morning. So let's get your presentation up.
Okay. I'm not sure if everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we just need to go to presentation mode and we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, let me just switch to presentation mode.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Babelwa Ngxale from the City of Joburg's Transport Department. However, as Anne mentioned, I have been seconded to the Johannesburg Development Agency for the next year. So, yeah, I'll be representing the JDA from moving forward. So I just have a quick presentation on our complete street project. So I'm just trying to move along. Okay. So the presentation content, I'll just discuss complete streets within the transport department, our allocation for the 2023-2024 financial year, projects that we've completed, and then challenges that we are facing with implementation. In terms of complete streets, in 2006, the city developed and adopted a growth and development strategy to align the long-term vision for the city with the short-term integrated development planning process. So the Joburg 2040 GDS is an aspirational strategy that defines the type of society the city aspires to achieve by 2040. So 4 major outcomes defined by the Joburg 2040 GDS are namely outcome number 1, improved quality of life and development driven resilience for all. Outcome 2, to provide a resilient, livable, sustainable urban environment underpinned by infrastructure supportive of a low carbon economy. Outcome 3, an inclusive, job-intensive, resilient, and competitive economy that harnesses the potential of citizens. And outcome 4, a high-performing metropolitan government that proactively contributes to and builds a sustainable, socially inclusive, locally integrated, and globally competitive Gauteng city region. So as the transport department, we mainly focus on outcome 2 with our complete street concept. And then in the city, the transport department's commission, the city's transport department commissioned the development of a complete street design guideline manual. And the document is a document that guides the city in developing a street system that is in line with the concept of livability by encouraging the walking and cycling modes, caters for all user groups, and encourages the use of public transport. So highlighted there are some of the key features of complete streets. Key features that complete streets are designed for, which is safety, access and mobility, context, livability, sustainability, visual excellence, and cost effectiveness. Now, in implementation, it is very difficult sometimes to achieve all of those based on the factors that we find on site, but we'll talk more about that on the later slides. And then in terms of the current financial year, we have a number of complete streets that we are implementing, and they are currently at different stages. We have complete streets in Deep South. This project is currently at implementation. It's a project that started in the 2022-2023 2022-2023 financial year, and it's nearing completion. Terfontein complete streets also commenced in the previous financial year. Chawelo is also at implementation. Then we also have complete streets in Pefeni, Those are currently at design phase. We also have Orlando non-motorized transport facilities. Basically, this project, the Orlando one, is to just complete a section of the project that we couldn't complete in the previous financial years due to budget constraints. And then also in Orange Farm, we are designing complete streets to link to public transport facilities. Tsepisong non-motorized transport facilities also are at implementation stage. We are about to appoint a contractor to commence with the works. And then in Lakeside, the project is currently at design stage. So for the 23-24 financial year, there's an allocated budget of 47 million dedicated to the Complete Streets program. And then some of the projects we completed. These are some of the projects we completed. So we had Complete Streets in Zimhlope on your left, and then also Complete Streets in Orlando, phase 1, and then phase 2 we completed last financial year. And these are some of the projects we completed in Orange Farm and Ivory Park. And then in terms of the challenges that we face, most of the time when we undertake these projects, we have issues of space because we are retrofitting on existing roads. So we would find issues where we've got deep driveways, where now it's very difficult to achieve the levels that we want, which then also compromises your universal access requirements. We've got poor stormwater accommodation, so we would have to now spend a big chunk of the budget in resolving stormwater issues. Then that basically now limits the kilometers that we can achieve in terms of complete streets. And then reinstatement issues where contractors, you would, after the project is complete, other contractors would come probably maybe to put in fiber, and then they don't reinstate the facilities. And then in terms of universal access, so now we have also it's a challenge because on the effective width of the sidewalk or cycle lane, you would find that we have obstacles on the sidewalks, where mostly in your township areas, you would find that people have constructed structures on the sidewalks to sell. So now it becomes difficult to actually achieve universal access. And then we get a lot of vandalism where some of the facilities, your paving blocks would be taken away, your signage would be taken away, I guess, to sell for scrap metal. And then now another thing, the signal heads are being stolen. And then another one of our challenges is maintenance, where our maintenance authorities are not always maintaining the cycle lanes. So you would find that grass growing all over the lanes, where now cyclists can't actually cycle. Then they would default to cycling on the road. And then in terms of cost of construction, the cost of achieving complete streets has grown substantially. And this is mainly due during implementation, what we found is a lot of times with the city's policy of 30% going to local SMMEs, we get situations where now we would appoint SMMEs to the project, they would tender, but then once they are in the project, then they have issues with their rates, where they want higher rates than what the contractor has tendered for. Now, this in turn negotiations have to start because now they stop projects. Now some of the budget has to be moved to covering these costs from SMMEs, which then now also results to the scope being reduced, and now we can't achieve the lengths that we desire. And then some examples of the challenges we're facing. I'm not sure on the left hand side there, you would see the traffic light has been knocked down, and it's been sitting like that for months now. And then on your right, the cycle lane, there's grass that's grown onto the cycle lane due to a pipe leaking right next to the cycle lanes. So now this basically is an issue when people have to cycle on those lanes. And then also this speaks to on your left, you would see that that's a cycle lane. However, they've come and put in some cables there. But however, the contractor that put in the cables did not reinstate. And then on the right-hand side, universal access, the reinstatement was done. However, it was not done according to standard. So these are just some of the issues we are facing. So although we are, as a city, we're facing a lot of issues. However, we are still committed to providing complete states and improving the lives of our citizens. Thank you. I think that's where my presentation ends in. Thank you.
So thanks, Babelwa. And thanks for your huge honesty here. Before I take questions, I know that Elaine in Sandton Central and maybe some of our other City Improvement District areas have been involved with you. So maybe if you can put your video on, let's see if the bandwidth allows it. Elaine, would you like to comment on Sandton Central's experience?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I think we started the Complete Streets pilot when, of course, during eco-mobility in 2015. Obviously, being in an area of, lots of movement, be it pedestrian, vehicle, we're trying to find that balance in providing and catering for all sorts. But obviously the cycling routes, it's not yet connecting. It kind of, it leads from Alex into Sandton, but then from there, it kind of stops somewhere. So it doesn't have that continuity to, say, Rosebank, for example. And also just generally the usage. So just sometimes wonder, when we create these infrastructures for cycling, whether there is adequate enough use. But then again, it's always that chicken and egg environment. We don't create that environment for safe cycling, then you will never have cycling options. And then also, the general maintenance of those cycling lanes are of concern, because they either get damaged and then not taken care of afterwards. And when we do raise it with JRA, they say, that's not our competency and we don't have the stock to replace those rumble blocks or things like that. And also, I think this week I had a request from JRA saying there's some sort of filming that they want to do on Maud Street, for example, and they want to take it off for a few. And I say, well, those were put in permanently. I'm not sure if JRA has actually contacted anybody at Department of Transport to understand how they can take that off for the few hours of filming that they need those removed, and how would they actually be putting it back. So again, we want to protect what's been put in place, but there's others wanting to remove these infrastructure. But in general, the complete street idea is great. Like I said, it caters It's supposed to cater for all sorts that come in, but then again, it's that protection, the maintenance generally is the problem, and also enforcement. You know, a lot of our cycle lanes, if not used, is then taken over by taxis and parked along, you know, those those cycle lanes, because it's not simply used enough. Yeah, so that's just my comment. But you know, like I said, you know, I like the pilot. You know, it does create that availability of all users and as equitable as possible. But yeah, it's just some of the challenges we've had on particularly those cycle lanes that we've had enjoyed during the eco-mobility startup. That's my feedback.
Oh, thanks so much, Elaine. I mean, your eco-mobility program was quite interesting, which was run for a year. I think it was even before COVID, if I remember rightly, for a month. And
Yes.
of course, people grumbled, but once it got going, it was fantastic. So it's about a combination of community support and law enforcement, and you know, a complete program. Babelwa, can you bring up your we don't want to put you on the spot because we can see that you're also struggling with what is a brilliant concept. Can you bring up your video? Get rid of your presentation, which was very brave and honest. Maybe we can get your video up. Yes, there we go. So now let's first of all see if we have questions from the floor. I have some questions myself, but I think that let's see what we've got from the floor, or comments or suggestions from the floor. Oh, there we go. Rogero. So we do Rogero, then Rory Sang, and then Ish. And if we take those three and then let Babelwa answer, and we can have a bit of a conversation about this. Thanks so much. So Rogero first.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your presentation, Babelwa. I really appreciate the fact that you've come out with some really honest queries. Our biggest challenge is that nothing is happening on the Alexandra route for the Ria Via, which was supposed to have taken place at least 10 years ago. And nothing will happen because nobody's doing anything about removing the shacks and the concrete structures built by squatters on the sidewalks and in invaded properties and partially in the streets as well. And I'd just like to find out if there's going to be any movement in terms of looking at getting eviction orders to remove and relocate the people on the sidewalks so that we can create this buffer from the total degradation that's happening in the Q industrial area. Sorry, my name's Rogero. I'm from the Q Action Group. We run the CID in the industrial area of Q and parts of Wynberg. So just like to see what is your feedback on that. And the depot, the parking lot has been established, but I believe that the depot is going to be relocated. It's a multi-billion rand project, which now would be relocated, which is very detrimental to the industrial area, as it would enhance and attract investment if this was carried through. Can you please answer those questions? Thank you.
Okay, so we've got quite a bit there. So let's answer Rogero before we go to Rory. So that's Ria Via through obviously to Alex, but in particular with reference to Q and to the parking facility.
Okay, thank you. So Anne, maybe I need to just clarify maybe first. So within the transport department, we are divided into two sections. There's a section dedicated specifically to the Ria Via, and we have core transport, which deals with in terms of complete streets and public transport facilities. So in terms of Ria Via, unfortunately, I'm not within the Ria Via section. I would then have to maybe raise the questions with our colleagues from Rea Vaya, which is Stanley Tsebekulu, and also Nobundu does studies for Rea Vaya, and then maybe then they can, I can ask them to respond via email, if that's fine.
Yep, no, that's understandable. Thank you so much. We will definitely take that up, Rogera's question up with Nubuntu. Okay, so Rory.
Hi, Babelwa, and thank you so much for your presentation. It's much appreciated. I just wanted to know from your side, do you guys have like a set handbook or guideline as to what your definition is of complete streets? And how are you really implementing it? Is it just mainly solely across townships, or are you also looking to now really expand across the city in other commercial or business areas? Because I think, you know, there is a growing need for non-motorized transport in different parts of the cities, and it would just be nice to know how you are, if you're also looking at in more of the commercial areas. Thanks.
Yep. So when we ask questions, good to introduce ourselves and the areas that we're particularly interested in. There we go. There's a question.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we have the complete street design manual that is used when we are designing complete streets. So we do not only concentrate on the township areas. We are now looking at your more industrial areas. We just did a project in Kaya Sense. However, now the approach there is to link basically public transport facilities, is to link complete streets with public transport facilities. So yes, we are looking at different areas. But however, then most of the need currently is in the township areas, but we are not excluding other areas from the program. Thanks.
Okay, so we leave Rory to follow up with you on that one. And Ish.
Good morning. I have questions which I'm asking because I have worked with the city and some of its entities. And then I'm just curious, and I wonder why didn't I ask this question before? That where the city has spent money and the project is not completed is related to the question which Roger raised. Does that become interpreted as wasteful expenditure in terms of accountability? Then the more important question, Babelwa, for me is that over the years, there's no project which the city undertakes does not list the sort of challenges you raised. So the question is, what are the lessons are we learning? Not only you, but all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's that the last one, well, both of them very good questions. Good luck, Babel, with answering it, but maybe we can have a conversation about how one can help you with the challenges that you are identifying, because we're all concerned about that, not just in transport.
Thank you. Yes, let me start with the projects that are undertaken but not completed, because then I would, well, not knowing, because then it would have to depend on the circumstances that have led to the incompleteness of the project. But I think one would regard it as wasteful expenditure, but also then, like I'm saying, it depends on the circumstances, because some projects are stopped because of community issues. And then in terms of the lessons learned, there's a lot we can try, but with the transport department, we have sort of now looked at maybe entering into service level agreements with the JRA, where as a department after construction, we make funds available for maintenance. But then it's something that we're looking at, but it's also then dependent on JRA's capacity to then cover all these areas. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Thanks, Babelwa. That is very helpful, but I think as Anne has said it, when you fail, we are not happy. And we don't like to blame you, we want to work with you. So if we are to be accountable is, if you are honest, you tell us we are failing and we won't just attack you. And you have done that. Thanks.
We're going to make some suggestions in a minute, but it is a problem throughout the city, is this integrated approach to the work we're doing, which includes community support and community relationships. I'm sure you know this grouping is very involved in that, and you're lucky when there are structured community institutions that you can work with. It does generally help a lot, although Sandton Central is also commenting, but it does help a lot. Michaela, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Anne, and thank you very much for that presentation. I do think it's important to start thinking about how we're looking at those streetscapes and how we're going to be implementing these different alternatives within that environment. I think what would be a conversation worth taking forward is, and it inevitably would involve the JRA as well, is trying to find mechanisms for communities to adopt complete streets and a more tactical urbanism or kind of less structured approach, because the reality is the city doesn't have endless budget to go and upgrade all streets, but the principles of what we're trying to achieve can be achieved in softer ways or different ways. But you can also get buy-in from businesses on a high street or whatever the situation might be. They can start adopting some of these principles in how they're intervening within their spaces. And I think what would be valuable is to almost have a mechanism that expedites the process or supports that process. I think people are very reluctant to, try put up a bike parking or try do something like that because, they don't want to go through the whole process of getting a JRA approval to put something up. And if we can find a kind of enabling partnership or mechanism, and we've had the discussion in different spaces with Adopt a Park or other projects like that almost get some level of consent of use almost from the JRA that can expedite that process and encourage communities to take ownership. I think there's a number of residents associations and bodies that exist that if they had something that would enable them to exercise some of these ideas, there would be appetite for that, and we would start to see more rapidly a change in how those spaces are being utilized, because that's enabling them to do that. And I definitely think that would be something worth exploring. I know it's not just transport, you have to get JRA on board, and that's very often where you get the stick in the mud, unfortunately. But I think that that's something worth trying to understand. What are those barriers and what are those obstacles, and how do we make it almost more accessible, that it's not reliant on city intervention or large capital expenditure for us to start seeing the principles of complete streets materializing in different communities. Thanks.
Yes, would you like to comment? So what do you think, Babelwa? I noticed that I'm not saying your name right, so forgive me for that, but I'm doing my best here. So Ish did it beautifully, and I think maybe I can get some lessons there. So what do you think? Because it must be quite frustrating. You've got the budget, you've got the concept. What do you think would help you most to overcome some of these challenges? I mean, I know you can't talk necessarily on behalf of the city, but you can talk on behalf of somebody who's trying to implement a really great program.
Thank you. Yeah, it is quite frustrating sometimes. But there's a lot of dynamics to it, especially with the issue of, like I mentioned, with the issue of SMMEs during implementation, because also that is one of the big issues that I'm not sure how, but it's one of the big issues that prevent us from sometimes achieving what we want to achieve. Because as mentioned, you find situations where now the budget has to be redirected to mostly labor, and then you don't achieve the kilometers or the type of complete streets that you would want. So now it becomes quite costly, and then it also delays projects quite extensively, because now a project that would normally take a year would end up taking 2 years, because now you have to constantly go and motivate for additional budget, because you lose budget in one financial year because you cannot implement, because there are work stoppages, and sometimes work stoppages that are not associated with your project. So there's that one, and then also then the maintenance aspect is also a big issue, because once the ribbon is cut, the facilities look great, but then you go after 6 months and it's not the same facilities you left there. So it is, like I mentioned, it is something that we are trying to deal with through the JRA, as they are our maintenance authority within the city. So yeah, it is discussions that we are having internally, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe at another level beyond me, they can be sorted. Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us. Actually, we think it's a wonderful program, but we are concerned, like you, as to how one ensures sustainability of these projects. And all the people here on this meeting are used to the concept of collaboration and working together. And we would very much like to explore with JRA, with transport. I know Ubuntu is always trying incredibly hard on this front, and so are other people. So we have a grouping of people here, and maybe we can pilot more. I know it's often the more privileged areas, but I can tell you that Randburg, Wynberg, Kew, the inner city, you know, are not in that sense privileged, and we have structures where we could work to do pilots that talk to sustainability. So I think that, you know, the more people we can get in this conversation, the better, because the concept's really great. There are questions around whether this is a priority at the moment, given all the things that we need to do in the city. But to me, one mustn't abandon, I was going to say dreams, but actually one mustn't abandon the perfect concept just because we're so busy with all the basics. So thank you. We support you where we can, but I'm going to encourage with my colleagues here that we have further conversation with you, with JRA and with others that talk to ways that we can ensure that these projects are sustainable, that procurement is such that it is appropriate and inclusive and developmental and all those things, which are correct. But I think at the moment we're not handling them well, and it's very interesting that we have so many colleagues in the city who feel the same way as we do. There must be a way we can navigate through this towards sustainability, because the projects are great, but they're just not sustainable. So I think, thank you for being brave. We like it. And we'll continue this conversation. Thanks so much. Good luck in your work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So back to our